तो ऑडियो हो रहा है, वहां से उन्होंने बंद किया हुआ है,
वहां से बंद किया हुआ है,
वहां से
आपकी
बंद
शेयरिंग
किया,
दोनों
बस ठीक है,
माइक भी ओपन है,
ठीक है, और वीडियो भी। उसने वहां से ऑडियो बंद किया हुआ है,
जी जी
ठीक,
ठीक है।
फुल है बस, ठीक है। इसको भी दोबारा से फुल स्लाइड शेयर करूं, क्या करूं फाद? इसको फुल स्क्रीन यहाँ से कर लूं, यहाँ से मैक्सिमाइज कर लूं,
कहाँ से?
फुल स्क्रीन कर दें, ठीक। अच्छा
आप माइक से
ठीक है। शुरू कर दे, स्टार्ट कर दूं, ठीक है, ओके। My name is Dr. Zubia Ramzan, working as assistant professor at Institute of Behavioral Sciences, Psychiatry Department of DIMC. Okay, today the topic is ethical aspect of organ transplantation or renal transplantation, as it's very common we are doing transplantation in the IMC, and it's going around in Karachi and all over Pakistan. This is the scenario for all of you. Kindly read this scenario. I can read it for you. A 55 years old farmer is planning to sell his kidney in order to pay his debt and to pay hospital bill of his severely ill son. There is a question, is selling any human organ for financial need is ethically allowed? Can anybody give me the answer on chat? You can send your answer on chat. What do you think? That farmer, he need money to pay his debt and to pay to hospital bill, is selling any organ is ethically allowed? Can anyone answer? You can answer on your chat. Okay. Okay. So there is no answer so far from the student. So ethically, it's not allowed to sell any human organ for financial need, nor it is allowed by your country laws and not by your religion. So it's very, very important that for any financial problem or any financial in debt or anything you want to pay to your hospital, you do not have to sell your organs. Okay, so it's ethically not allowed. That's why this topic is very, very important for undergraduate to understand what is the laws of your country and what is according to your religion. Now, the learning objectives of our topic today is ethics. What is ethics? What are the pillars of medical ethics, which are very, very important, and sometimes you have to follow the decision according to these ethics. Then what are the ethical omission in medical practices, and what are the major ethical issues in organ transplant? Okay, so these objectives are very, very important for you to understand and evaluate. First, ethics. What is ethics? It's a system of moral principle. What is right? what is wrong, what is acceptable in our society, and what is allowed by our Islamic, or what is Islam by religion, any religion, and what are society or country's law. Okay, so it's different in different countries. So we will follow according to our culture, according to our country laws. So it's a branch of philosophy dealing with the values relating to human conduct. Okay, what you are doing, what are you doing wrong or right, it should be according to your societal values and your principles. So this is the ethics, moral principle. Then second is the branches of medical ethics. This is the medical ethics is different as compared to other types. There are different types of ethics, but we are more concerned with the medical ethics. Medical ethics are two: normative ethics and descriptive ethics. Okay, so we will discuss it one by one. Normative ethics, it's concerned with your norms of conduct, which is established in your society, which is acceptable in your society, and usually followed by all people around you. Okay, whether, for example, whether taking consent from an illiterate man about a surgery. Okay, this is the example I am giving, and it's related to your medical profession. So you are able to understand what type of medical ethics we have to follow. If your unconscious patient comes to a ER and there is no family member around you, now it's a duty of a doctor to help that patient what he can do best for that unconscious patient. Okay, so if a person is an illiterate, he has no idea about any surgery, so you have to, sometimes you have to do not take consent. Sometimes it do happens, okay? He is unable to understand what you are telling. Sometimes there are communication barrier, language barrier, so it's difficult in some situation. But what you are doing in the best help for the patient. Okay, so this is the normative ethic. What you did, it's according to the norms of the conduct to help the patient who is unable to understand the procedure of surgery. But if any family members available and he is able to understand things, then you can take consent from that family member. Okay, so this is very, very important for you to understand the normative. You have to follow the norms, the values of your society. Then comes the descriptive ethics. Okay, descriptive ethics, it's concerned with the study and compilation of a data on actual moral behavior and beliefs. Okay, it's all related to your behavior and your beliefs. What is your behavior in certain situation? Okay, and what is your belief? It could be your cultural belief, it could be your personal belief, it could be your religious belief. Okay, how you follow in your society. So we are giving the examples in the according to medical scenario. First example is, should public money be used to treat patient of drug abuse and AIDS patient? Second, should population control division pay bills of an employee seeking a test tube baby or in vitro fertilization? So these are the very complicated situation in which what are your beliefs and behavior. You want to help that person. You want to help that person in which you think paying bills of that person is right or wrong. Okay, sometimes in Islamic countries, we are using the charity money to pay the bills of poor patient. We are using the charity money or zakat money to pay for the surgery of a poor patient, to pay for the medicine of the people. So it's very, very important what we consider our religious belief, that helping the poor with the help of charity is possible, it is acceptable to the patient or not, okay, or is it acceptable to the donors or not. So it's very, very important, and this is the very sensitive ethical issues. Being living in Islamic countries, sometimes there by donors and by our laws that we cannot spend our money of charity on non-Muslim. Okay, so we have another type of non-zakat funds. So we can spend non-charity money on non-Muslim patient, because in our medical term and in medical field, all Muslim, non-Muslim are equal. Okay, but we have some liabilities that you have to spend your charity money on Muslim patient, but we can use our donation money, which is non-charity, on our non-Muslim patient, because we want to help all poor which are in need. So this is important for you to understand the normative, which is concerned with the norm of conduct, and descriptive is concerned with the your moral behavior and your beliefs. So there is a difference between two. Okay, there is a quiz. I need your input. You can give me your answer on your chat. There is a surgical resident, after taking permission from his head of department, treating the substance user from ward charity money. Okay, there is a surgical resident, after permission from his head of department, treating the substance user from ward charity money. Which type of medical ethic he is following? Anybody can answer? You can give me your answer on chat. Any idea about that answer? What should be the answer? Okay, good. Dania has answered descriptive ethic. Aisha, descriptive ethic, good. So your answer will be the descriptive ethics, in which a resident, after taking permission from head of department, and he's using the charity money to help the substance user. Sometimes IV user or substance user have surgical problem. They have vein blocked. They have abscesses, and surgery people have to drain it. So this surgical resident want to help that substance user so that he can protect them from other diseases. Okay, so this is his moral beliefs and its behavior, that with his behavior he has take permission and he has decided that he can use the charity money to treat that substance user who are coming to the surgical ward or surgical OPD. So this is a type of descriptive ethic. Good. Okay, next are the pillars of medical ethics. These pillars are very, very important for you to remember. Okay, it will be helpful throughout your undergraduate and even in your house job and even in your postgraduate, and even you are doing your medical practices. First is the autonomy, second is the beneficence, third is the non-maleficence, and fourth is the justice. Okay, so this is very, very important, and it is helpful in throughout your medical career. It's helpful for dental student also and medical student also, as we are teaching the medical students. So it's for you to helpful in your career. So you have to follow these ethics if you are seeing the patient or if you are doing duties, or what your ward or hospital is following the ethics. So we will discuss in detail. First is the autonomy. Autonomy means every patient has a right to agree or disagree with the doctor advice. Okay. In older times, patients usually follow the doctor advice. They do not have given the right to choose to agree or disagree. But nowadays, it's the right of a patient to agree or disagree with the doctor decision. Okay, but it's a duty of doctor to counsel that patient that this decision in his right, in his for betterment, but it's now his decision whether he want to follow or not. So autonomy, it's very, very important. It will can be applied in a research, it can be applied in treatment procedure, whether we want to go for surgery or you do not go for surgery. So autonomy, it's very, very important, and it's the right of a patient to follow or not. Okay. Then second pillar of medical ethics is the beneficence. Beneficence means you have to give maximum benefit to your patient. This benefit can be to provide good treatment, proper treatment to the patient according to his needs, and giving the medication with less side effects. Okay, and doing the surgery in the best reason of the for best patient, to help the patient in the best term. Okay, so beneficence is the duty and responsibility of all medical profession, whether it's a house officer, it's a postgraduate officer, or it's a registrar, or it's the undergraduate student, to be good to all patients. At your level, you are third year students. Okay, so now it's your responsibility. You are attending your ward and you are taking history from a patient. So you will take history from that patient, but your communication are so good that what you are asking, it would be in a good for the patient. Okay, that you are helping the patient to give you the history about his illness. So whatever it comes to you, you can give history to your seniors. Okay, so it will be helpful for them to make a diagnosis. So beneficent, whatever you are doing with the patient, it should be in the good faith of patient. So this is very, very helpful, beneficence. Then come the non-maleficence. And non-maleficence means you are not giving benefit or not doing harm to the patient. Okay. As the Hippocratic oath, we are taking the oath before coming to the medical institute, that I will not harm my patient in any cost. I will give benefit to my patient. Okay, so it's an obligation and a duty of a doctor to do not harm the patient at any cost. Okay, for example, sometimes we are giving ICU patient, they are in very severe pain, especially the patient who are suffering from cancer. Okay, so sometimes we have to give them opioid analgesic, okay, to relieve the pain of cancerous patient who are at terminal illness. But sometimes this opioid analgesic can cause respiratory depression. Okay, but in your mind, I have to reduce the suffering of my patient, to reduce the pain of that terminal illness. But in my mind, I do not want to harm the patient from respiratory depression. So you have to keep the dose under control to reduce the side effect of opioid analgesic. So this is, we are not doing the harm to the patient in long term. We have to decide what we are doing and what we can benefit we can give to a patient. Okay, and we have to maximize the harm, minimize the harm to the patient, maximize the benefit and minimize the harm. So it's the duty of doctor to do not harm the patient at any cost. Okay. If you are a third year student and you are taking history from a patient and all of a sudden he become irritable with at once, as you are asking some question which is annoying for the patient. So it's very, very important for you to understand that patients are very, very sensitive and we do not want to harm that even with our communication style. So it's very, very important for an undergraduate to understand that communication is very, very important. If you want to follow the ethics, you should be a very sensitive doctor. Okay. Last pillar of medical ethics is justice. Justice, you have to provide equal resources to every patient, not that your health services is for rich patient and you are not providing the same services to the poor patient. Medical profession is the only profession in which doctor has to provide every medical facility to every patient. It is the right of a patient to be served by a doctor. Okay, so we are treating the rich patient, we are also treating the poor patient. Okay, so there should be no demarcation between these two classes, upper class and lower class. So our health resources must always be distributed according to the principle of justice, equity. So equity is very, very important even in our medical profession. Okay, for example, if government has given, we are doing the public private sector. Okay, government has given us the budget that you have to serve this community. Okay, so we have to justify that budget or to allocate that budget according to the needs and according to the justice of medical problem in our society. Okay, so we cannot spend too much on gastro and we cannot spend too much in other field. We have to equally divide according to the need of our society. So this is very, very important for you to understand, and justice is very important pillars of medical ethics. Now, there is another quiz. A 34 years old female, after giving consent to participate in research, decided to withdraw herself from the research due to some personal reason. Okay, a 34 years old female, she first agreed to participate in a research, then at once she withdrew from the research due to some personal reason. Which pillar of medical ethic is most likely fitted in that scenario? Okay, we have followed the 4 medical ethics. So, autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, justice. Can anybody tell me the answer on chat? Good. Okay. Nadeem, Aisha, okay, Zahra, Amna, okay, Priyanka, Nurul Ulma, TK, mostly has given the right answer. So it means you are following and you are understanding that topic. This is very, very sensitive. Being a psychiatrist, it's not applicable on my field. It is applicable in all medical field. It could be gynae, it could be surgery, it could be medicine. So you should be a very sensitive doctor, okay, and provide this medical ethics to all your patients. So it will be helpful. So the right answer is autonomy. So it's the right of a patient to withdraw from research at any time because it's her decision to accept, to agree, or to disagree. Okay, so this is very, very important. Okay, now come the ethical omission in medical practices. This is very, very important. What are the omissions? Okay, principles in medical ethics. It's the consent and then comes the confidentiality. Okay, it can be applied in every examination. Okay, medical examination, medical procedure, you have to take consent from the patient and confidentiality. Okay, so consent is it's the agreement of a patient to an examination, procedure, or treatment. As I already told you, it can be applied to your examination, to your procedure, and your treatment. So it's very, very important. So, okay, still people are giving the answer. Okay, good. The answer is right. So it can be given orally, it can verbal or oral, it can be by signing or by written. You are giving the consent that I am agree to your treatment, or I am going for the procedure, or by gesture, by just nodding the head. So consent can be given in any form. But for a valid consent, the person should be at the age of 18, okay, not less than 18. It should be so mature enough that he has a national identity card, or he is responsible for his act. Okay, if a person is 18 years old, he, his consent will be valid. Under 18, his consent will not be valid. So it's very, very important to understand the age of a consent. Then patient should be competent and capacity to make decision. If a person is suffering from dementia or suffering from any psychotic illness or any other medical problem which decrease his capacity to make decision, then they are unable to give the consent. For giving the consent, you should be mature enough at age 18 years, and you should be free from illness, or at least if you are have suffering from many medical illness, it should be treated and you are taking some medication. And you should be competent, yet you are able to understand which thing is right or wrong, what will be the consequences of the procedure. So consent is very, very important. Okay, even in psychiatry, in medicine, it's very, very important. Even before examination, you are undergraduate, third year student, going to ward, taking history from the patient, then you have to take consent कि डॉक्टर साहब, मुझे मेरे डॉक्टर साहब ने आपसे बात करने की कहा है, आपकी बीमारी के बारे में जानने का कहा है, क्या आप मुझे इजाजत देते हैं? ठीक है, तो दिस इज द कंसेंट. You are taking consent from the patient to take the history. So it's very, very important. First, you have to greet the patient. Okay, you can say, Assalamu alaikum, my name is this, and I'm here to take history from you. Are you agree with this or not? Okay, so this is very, very important. This is the consent. Okay, second is the confidentiality. We have to maintain the confidentiality of a patient even after death. This is very, very sensitive issue in doctor life. Sometimes patients share a very, very confidential issue with you, and you have to keep it confidential. It's the duty of a doctor. Even your Hippocratic oath told you have to be confidential in patients' dealing. Okay, you cannot discuss patient's matter with other family members, okay, of the patient. You have to take consent from the patient that these are the issues I have to discuss with the psychologist, or I have to discuss with my senior, or I have to discuss with my head of the department. It will help you in making the diagnosis, in making the right decision. So you have to inform your patient in advance. Okay, so it's a duty of a doctor to respect the confidence that the patient has him. Sometimes patient do not want to talk about his life events in front of all family members. He needs some confidentiality. He can say, or she can say, doctor, can I talk with you alone? Okay, so you can have to give that space to the patient so he can talk to you. Okay, so it's very, very important to respect the confidentiality of the patient. Okay, as I told you, not only in the treatment period, even after the death of the patient, this confidentiality should be maintained. Being a psychiatrist, in our history, psychosexual history is very, very important to ask from the patient. Without asking the psychosexual history, our history is incomplete. So this is the very confidential and sensitive issue throughout the world. It doesn't mean that we are the Islamic countries and we have to be very careful in maintaining the confidentiality of psychosexual history. No, it's the right of a patient throughout the world. It's the very confidential history, and they are trusting the doctor and they are giving their psychosexual history to our doctors only. Okay, so it's very, very sensitive issue and we have to keep it very confidential. Okay, so these are the things which are the most common ethical omission. Now there is a quiz. I'm giving you quiz repeatedly, so I'm able to know that you are following the lecture or you are awake or not, because you are all home. I cannot see you. So with this help of quiz, I know that my students are able to understand the topic or not, or they are able to apply this knowledge in their wards or in their future. Okay. A 29-year-old man allowed a resident to examine his genital region before operation. Now, this is a very sensitive area, okay? Which ethical omission of medical practice is most likely fitted in that scenario? Now, genital region is very sensitive area. We have to examine that patient in examination room. We have to inform that I am doing examination. So only doctor and staff, one staff is allowed to remain, even after the permission of the patient, that he wants to keep that staff in front of a doctor to examine him or not. Okay, so can anybody give me the answer on chat? What will be the ethical omission of this question? Okay. Consent. Okay. Okay, so he has to take consent. So this is important, that if a man allowed, because he has given the permission to a resident that he can examine his genital region before operation, before a surgery. So consent is very, very important. Okay, because that man has agreed to the examination. So this is the consent. Okay, one student has given the answer of previous question, that autonomy, and we can counsel that person. But it's important right of a patient. Before in research, we counsel them or we tell them about the research proposal, but it's the right of patient to withdraw from the research at any time. Okay, so you can go for the research ethics. So it is the right of a person or a patient to withdraw from the research, even though you have counseled them. It's their right to withdraw from the research at any time, even after 5 minutes of agreeing to the research proposal. Okay, so it's very, very important. Then now the main topic is, what is organ transplant? Okay, organ transplant is the surgical operation where a failing or damaged organ removed and replaced with new one. Okay, so you have to undergo the surgical procedure in which you have to replacing the damaged organ with a healthy organ. Okay, so mostly the solid organ transplant that are going in Pakistan is the liver and kidney. Okay, we are not replacing intestine, nor pancreas, nor lungs, not heart in Pakistan. We are always dealing with renal and liver transplant as well as bone marrow transplant. So these things are common in Pakistan, and you should be know where the places this transplant is available. Your institute, DIMC, we have a renal transplant unit, we have a liver transplant unit, and these are the best unit in Karachi. Okay, so you can refer the patient who are suffering from renal diseases or liver diseases. Okay, so it's important, and before going to the transplant, their psychiatric fitness and medical fitness is very, very important, even for donor and even for recipient. Okay, other transplant, skin, corneal, they are not going in Pakistan, but bone marrow transplant. I have heard that corneal transplant are now in process. So in few years, I think the corneal transplant will be common in Pakistan. So bone marrow transplant is going on, and it's very, very old after renal transplant. Okay, so next is the major ethical issues of organ transplant. There are the medical issues in organ transplant. First, organ shortage. Organs are not available every time and for every patient. Okay, there is a donor shortage. Then comes the donor organs. Okay, how will you take organs from a donor who is healthy? How will you motivate that donor? And how will you the available of organs for a person whose organ are failing? So this is the most common ethical issue the Pakistan throughout the world is facing. Okay, even in our country, and we are following our religion, so we have different concept of transplant. Okay, but after taking consent from the scholars and from um, Islamic scholars or from other literature, Islamic literature, they have taken consent from the scholar, Islamic scholar, that transplant is helpful for the humankind. Okay, so for renal transplant, SIUT, Sindh Institute of Urology and Transplantation, it's a only center in Pakistan which is helping the poor. Okay, without any cost, they are helping the poor, even rich. All person, every person is getting benefit from SIUT for renal transplant. Okay, so they have taken the consent from Islamic scholar that transplant is acceptable in Islam. Okay, so they have some evidence and they are following that evidence. So you have to follow according to your laws and to your country laws and what your religion says. Okay, if you are living in Pakistan. Then organ shortage, the other problem in organ shortage, what will be the distribution of available organ? To whom we will give the organs? To young people, to old people, to male or to female or to a child? So there is a distribution according to different organization. There is a World Procurement Organ Organization which distribute the organ according to the need of a person. They mostly distribute the according to age of a person. Mostly they help the person who are young, who are on which the family is dependent and the life survival is good. So they can distribute the organ, they are distributing the organ according to some certain needs of the person, according to the doctor needs, what doctor decide, what should be the ideal person to be donate, to be given the organs. Okay, so it depends on the decision of that distribution organs committee and the doctor. Then comes the current distribution policy. Okay, worldwide there are distribution policies according to their country laws and according to their city laws, according to their medical laws. Okay, so you distribute the organs according to their policy. So different policies of different countries. Currently in Pakistan, there are certain policy that organ transplant organs for organ transplant, family member has to donate. Non-family members or other than family members or non-relative cannot donate an organ to a person. That person should be has a blood relationship. It could be a cousin, it could be a sibling, it could be a children. So it's very, very important to follow, and worldwide it's follow. But sometimes there we are heard that sometimes they have paid money to the donor and donor was not blood relative, and they were matched on their samples, and they have paid, the family paid the money to the donor, and ultimately they get the organs. But to have on a safe side, to reduce the rejection, to reduce the other medical problem in the donor organs, so it's a policy to take the donor organs of our family members. Okay, so I discussed the distribution of available organ, the United Network of Organ Sharing. You can search on Google. This is the network which help the worldwide for organ donor. Okay, but as in our policy of Pakistan, we need a family member to donate an organ. And there is another organization you can search on Google, Organ Procurement Organization. It's basically, these organizations are from United Nations. Okay, so we do not follow them in Pakistan, but you should be have an idea that these are the two organizations working for organ transplantation. Okay, but in Pakistan, even in DIMC, we need a family member to donate the organ to his or her family member. Okay. Now, current distribution policy, as I already told you, what will the equal access? It should be accessible to the poor and it should be accessible to the rich. You know, organ transplantation is very expensive procedure, and sometimes there is a chances of failure. Okay, so in DIMC, the cost of renal transplant, it's about 4 to 10 lakhs. Okay, you should have an idea, okay, how costly it is. And liver transplant is near about 40 to 50 lakh. Okay, so liver transplant is very expensive, and renal transplant is about around 4 to, in between 4 to 10 lakhs. Okay, so it's expensive, and rich can give money to have this. But in renal transplant, they have some zakat system, charity system, so they can help the poor people. Now with the distribution policy, we have to give maximum benefit. Okay, we have to select the patient, okay, whether this patient is a young and the survival rate is more. So we have to select the patient up to give the maximum benefit. Okay, and medical need. If a person is having a failing organ, and there is a chances that with the healthy organs transplant, he will be medically benefit. So we have to give benefit to that patient. Then doctor team have to decide what will be the success rate. Success rate mostly found in a young patient, not in an old patient. Okay, so they have to decide if we are transplanting the organ to a young patient, then the chances of success is 80%, 70%, 50%. Then there is a time on waiting list. The procurement organ, as I search it on Google, there was a waiting list on that organization list. Okay, that people were waiting for organ. Okay, but in Pakistan, this is not a problem because we have a humanity. The family members are so generous. Even I am doing the psychiatric fitness of patient, of donor and recipient. the cousins, the sister, the siblings, the mother, parents of a family member, they are ready to give the organ to their family member if they are suffering from any renal failure or liver failure. So sometimes it do happen in Pakistan that we have donors available, okay, and so there's a strict policy that family members should be donor because they are giving it with the generous heart, okay, and they have no such monetary advantages from that family member. So these transplant are mostly successful, okay. So you have to think about that this is a very sensitive issue in finding a donor, okay. Then strategies, there are certain strategies to increase the cadaveric organ donation. In Pakistan, it's not very common. It's rarely found. The first cadaveric organ donation was my teacher. He is not alive, Professor Dr. Razak. He's a doctor of pathology and he was a very fine teacher of pathology, and he has donated his kidney. And he was the first donor of kidney, and SIUT has used the kidney of my teacher to donate to other person. Okay, he was the first doctor in Pakistan who has donated his kidney. Okay, and then there are other persons, they have donated young person who has donated the organ. They have given the will, wasiyat. They have given the will during their life that if they are dead, their organ should be given to the SIUT. Okay. So whenever you visit the SIUT or you visit the website, you will see the donors of kidney, and you will see the name of my teacher and few other doctors, young doctors who has donated their organs during their, they have given the consent to take the kidney of them when they are not alive. Okay, so to increase that cadaveric organ donation, we have to educate the community that when you want to give your organs when you will be dead, but you have to give the consent in advance to certain organizations which are doing work fearlessly with equity and giving benefit to community. Okay, and we have to give the mandated choice what they want to give, donate the organ, whether they want to donate the cornea, they want to donate the skin, they want to donate the heart, they want to donate the liver, what they want to donate. Okay, and you should take the consent in advance. They should have a agreement that I want to give the consent that you should take my organs when I am dead. Sometimes to increase the cadaveric organ in worldwide, they give the incentives to the person or to the families that the person is died, and family have to decide whether they want to donate the organ or not. In Western countries, they help them in their burial, okay, in their death ceremonies, or they help them in their funeral. Okay, so this is the incentive given by the medical team in order to increase the organ donation. Sometimes in some Western countries, that prisoner who are just decided by the court that they will be hanged, so their organs will be used for transplantation, but not in Pakistan. We do not use the organs of a prisoner for organ donation. But in Western countries, there are laws that they use the prisoner organ who are hanged to death. Okay, so this is very, very important. Then donor organs. This is the problems in organ shortage, that donor organs, that what donor organs you are selecting, whether it's a cadaveric organs after death, living organ, If a person is donating his kidney to his brother and he can live with one kidney, or he is donating part of a liver to his sibling, and alternative organs. Now, alternative organs are very common and research are going on in alternative organs. Living organ donation is common, but in Pakistan, cadaveric organ donation is not very common. We are still unable to increase awareness about cadaveric organ donation, because in our religion, and we have a concept that we have to die with the all organs the Allah has given. Okay, but mostly the things are changing, and you have to taking consent from the scholars, that Islamic scholar, which what is right and what is wrong. Okay, so you have to follow your country law, and you have to follow your cultural law and your beliefs. Okay, you cannot challenge one from their belief. If he has a belief that he cannot donate his organ after he is dead, then you cannot challenge them. Okay, it's the right of a patient, right of a person, okay, what he wants to do. As I told you, alternative organs are mostly researched nowadays. So we are not using the animal organs, okay? But first heart transplant was taken from the chimpanzee, okay? So, but it was not successful, but monkey or chimpanzee heart was used in human for as a animal alternative transplant. Then artificial organs, as heart was artificially transplanted in Western countries, but the success rate was also not good. Now I have also studied that artificial kidney is available, okay, but still the success rate is not very much, so it's very debatable. Then comes the stem cell. Stem cell now is used and it's researchable. Older is the bone marrow transplant. Bone marrow transplant is same as stem cell. You are taking the cells from your body tissues and you are placing in the diseased place, so it will regenerate and you have the healthy cells. Okay, so this is the same as bone marrow transplant, stem cell. So for chronic illnesses, they are using the stem cell therapy. Stem cell therapy, we have centers available in Karachi, in Clifton, in Soldier Bazaar, even in defense sites. So basically these are all private organizations. So we do not have public sector by government to help the patient from stem cell. NIBD, National Institute of Blood Disease, was for bone marrow transplant, but it's public-private sector, semi-private, semi-government. So they have some charity patient too, but limited patient. So stem cell, oldest is the bone marrow transplant, and newest evidence or research are going on stem cell. Fourth one is the aborted fetus. In Islamic countries, we have to take a decision from the Islamic scholar whether we can use the aborted fetus or not. Okay, so we have different concept in Islamic culture that we cannot use aborted fetus, we have to bury them. Okay, so but I heard that in DIMC, some researches are going on aborted fetus after taking consent from the Islamic scholar. Because aborted fetus, we can use the placenta, we can use the other cells to help the patient with suffering from medical illness. So this is very helpful, aborted fetus. Okay. There is a quiz. Which alternative organ is now researched and in a process to work as an organ transplant? You can give me your answer. We have limited time. Which alternative organ is now most research-based and in the process to work as organ transplant? For which you do not need any donor. Any answer? Good. Priyanka stem cell, Dania stem cell, Aisha stem cell, Dua, Shazin. Okay, good. So this is the alternative organ is a stem cell. Okay. Now we are concluding our lecture. Ethics is the system of moral principle. What is right, what is wrong, what is acceptable and what is not. Pillars of medical ethics: autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. These are the important pillars of medical ethics. And consent and confidential are the ethical omission in medical practice. And organ shortage and donor organs are the most common ethical issues in organ transplant. Okay, so this is the overview and the conclusion, take home message that ethics is very important in your medical career. You have to follow, even you are in a third year, you have to follow in fourth year, even till your medical practice. So it's very, very important. Okay, thank you. Any questions so far? Any question? अस्सलामुअलैकुम। बस हाँ, ख़त्म हो गई। ठीक है, ओके, थैंक यू, अल्लाह हाफिज़।